Welcome back to the Late Reader. The lamp is lit. The window is open. The rain has not stopped. Settle in. Listen.
Welcome back to the Late Reader. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and lock your doors. Tonight, we're diving into a story that was submitted by a viewer who works as an archivist. Usually, on this channel, we deal with home invasions, creepy stalkers, or encounters in the deep woods. But this story proves that sometimes, you don't even have to leave your own apartment to invite something terrifying inside. Sometimes, the horrors of the past get trapped in the objects they leave behind.
If you have a true scary story you'd like to hear narrated, be sure to send it to the email in the description below. Now, let's get into the story. This story starts a few years ago. I work as a curator and archivist for a pretty well-known university museum. My specific department handles historical artwork, mostly antique sketches, engravings, and architectural plans of old estates. It's usually incredibly quiet, dusty work. But what happened to me a couple of years back completely changed the way I look at old artwork.
We have this one dealer in London who regularly sends me catalogues of his inventory. Let's just call him Britnell. One Tuesday, I got an email with his latest list, and item 978 caught my eye. The description just read, unknown. Interesting Mezzotint, view of a manor house, early 19th century, black frame, $200. Now, for a generic, unidentified print, that price was absurdly high. But Britnell usually knows his stuff, so I figured there had to be something special about it.
It arrived at my office late on a Friday. I was already heading out, so I just took the parcel back to my apartment on campus to look it over the weekend.
When I finally unpacked it, I was completely underwhelmed. A mezzotint is already pretty much the worst, most muddy form of engraving, and this one was incredibly amateur. It just showed a basic, symmetrical manor house by moonlight, with a huge empty lawn in front and some trees on the sides. Total amateur hour. On the back of the frame, there was a torn paper label with just the ends of two words left. Ein, See, Hall, and Sex. I figured I'd try to identify the estate later, but I was definitely planning on returning it on Monday.
That evening, I had a buddy of mine, let's call him Brian, over for a few beers. At one point, he noticed the picture leaning against the wall near my desk and asked about it. I told him it was an overpriced piece of junk, but as he leaned in to look at it, he pointed at the glass. I mean, the moonlight effect is actually pretty decent, he said. And that figure is super creepy. I paused. What figure? He tapped the edge of the frame. Right there, on the edge of the lawn.
I walked over and looked closer. Sure enough, right on the extreme right edge of the engraving, there was a dark shape. It looked like a person muffled in a heavy black cloak, with their back turned to the viewer, looking toward the house. I swear on my life, I hadn't noticed it when I unpacked it. But the print was dark, and I figured I was just being unobservant. Brian left around 11 p.m. I stayed up for a bit, answering some emails. Before heading to bed, I reached over to turn off my desk lamp. The light from my window hit the picture perfectly, and I froze.
My heart slammed into my ribs. The figure in the picture was no longer on the edge of the frame. It was now dead center in the middle of the lawn, and it wasn't standing anymore. It was crawling on all fours toward the front door of the house. I could faintly see a white cross on the back of its dark cloak.
I panicked. I literally didn't know what to do. I was alone in my apartment, staring at a picture that was physically changing. I ended up picking the frame up by the corner, carrying it into my spare room, throwing it into a drawer, and locking the deadbolt. I barely slept a wink that night. The next morning, I convinced myself I was losing my mind. I called another colleague from the museum, David, and asked him to come over immediately. I didn't tell him why. When he got there, I unlocked the drawer, pulled the picture out, keeping it face down.
"Tell me exactly what you see," I said. David looked at it, clearly confused. "Okay, it's a house at night. Waning moon, no figures." My blood ran cold. "Wait, no figures? Nothing on the grass." "Nothing," he said. "But one of the windows on the ground floor is open." I snatched the picture from him. He was right. The crawling figure was completely gone, and the window to the left of the front door, which had been shut the day before, was now wide open.
I explained everything that had happened. David thought I was pulling some kind of elaborate prank, but when he saw how pale and genuinely terrified I was, he got quiet. He took a picture of the engraving with his phone to document it. We decided we needed to leave it out and watch it. We left the picture propped up on my coffee table and went to grab an early dinner, locking the door behind us. When we got back a few hours later, My apartment door was slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. I pushed. Instead, it was just the building's maintenance guy, Robert. He was standing in the middle of my living room, staring down at the picture. He looked absolutely horrified. "I'm sorry to intrude, sir," Robert stammered, backing away from the table. "I just came in to check the radiator. But I wouldn't leave a picture like that out. Not where people can see it." "Why?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It's just sick," he said, shivering. "A skeleton carrying off a baby? It ain't right." As soon as Robert hurried out of the apartment, David and I rushed over to the table.
The scene had changed again. The ground floor window was closed, and the figure was back on the lawn. But it wasn't crawling away. It was walking toward the front of the picture, toward change. The black cloak was draped over its head, but you could see a pale, dome-like forehead and a few straggling hairs. Its legs were horribly, unnaturally thin, like bone, and wrapped tightly in its skeletal arms was a small, motionless child.
David and I sat there for 2 hours, just staring at it, waiting to see if it would move in real time. It didn't. It only ever changed when you weren't looking directly at it. By midnight, the picture changed one last time. The figure was gone. The house was quiet under the moon, just like when I first pulled it out of the box. We spent the entire next day at the library, searching through old property registries and gazetteers, trying to match the torn label on the back. Finally, we found it. The house was Anningley Hall, located in Essex.
According to local historical records, the estate had belonged to a man named Arthur Francis, a wealthy squire and an amateur artist. The family line abruptly went extinct in 1802, when Francis's infant son mysteriously disappeared from his crib in the middle of the night. Further digging revealed some dark local lore. Francis was notorious for violently punishing poachers on his land. He had a deep, bitter vendetta against a local man named Gaudy. Francis managed to get Gaudy framed and hanged for shooting a gamekeeper. Gaudy was the last of his family bloodline.
The running theory in the village back then was that a friend of Gaudy's wanted revenge. But looking at the dates, Gaudy was hanged just weeks before Francis's child was taken. It wasn't a friend seeking revenge. It was Gaudy himself, crawling out of his unmarked grave, opening the ground floor window, and taking the last of Francis's bloodline, just as Francis had taken the last of his.
I donated the picture to a secure university archive in another city. They ran every test imaginable on it. UV light, chemical analysis for disappearing ink, nothing. It's just a normal Mezzotint. And as far as I know, the image hasn't changed since. But sometimes, when I'm walking across campus late at night, and I see a dark shape on the edge of the lawn, I don't wait around to see if it starts crawling.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight's video. A huge thank you to the archivist who sent that in. I know I'm definitely going to be checking the background of any thrift store paintings I buy from now on. If you enjoyed tonight's story, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. Leave a comment down below. What would you have done if you saw that figure moving closer? I think I would have thrown the whole frame into a bonfire.
Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on so you never miss an upload. Stay safe out there, lock your doors, and good night.
That was the story. The lamp will still be on when you wake. New stories every Friday at the late hour. Until then, watch your reflection.